Welcome to this episode of our Charity Spotlight series here on the C-Suite podcast, where the focus this time is on the Young Women's Trust. That's a charity that champions young women aged 18 to 30 on low or no pay in order to create a more equal world of work and raise young women's incomes. My name is Debbie West, and joining me online to discuss the role businesses play in levelling the playing field for young women are Claire Reindorp, Chief Executive at the Young Women's Trust, Claire Burton, who is Head of Social Impact at Deloitte, and finally, we're especially pleased to welcome Pippa Rawlinson, a trainee solicitor at Preston Redman, who's benefited personally from the work of the Trust and was, very thankfully, keen to share her story with us. So we're really grateful for you joining us, Pippa, and taking the time to do this while you're on your holiday in Morocco. So, Claire Reindorp, I'd like to come to you first. The Young Women's Trust has recently released the results of a survey. I've had a look at the survey and it is packed with data points that highlight the impact of the disparity of young women's experiences. So could we start the conversation with you? Will you give us an overview of the key points from that report?
Of course, thanks, Debbie. Well, the headline findings from the survey are really that money and work worries are blighting young women's lives and that their financial circumstances are much worse than that of their male peers. And looking at money, first of all, 41% of young women said that their financial situation got worse over the last 12 months compared to 27% of young men. And more than a third of young women have taken on new debt in the last year compared to around a quarter of young men. And I think particularly shockingly, 55% of young women told us they were filled with dread at the state of their finances. Of course, the cost of living crisis is out of the headlines, but it's not out of the reality of people's lives, and particularly young women are really getting a raw deal. And when you think about work, I mean, we've done this survey now for 3 years in a row, and we found that discrimination is at an all-time high. More than half of young women are experiencing it. And if you're racially minoritized young women, 61% were reporting discrimination. I think the really important thing is this isn't in young women's heads. I mean, alongside this survey that we did with young men and young women, we did a survey with 900 professionals who have responsibility for recruitment or HR decision-making. And a third of those decision-makers knew that there'd been instances of discrimination of young women in their own workplace in the past year. And it's just showing up in terms of a lack of equal pay, slower progression, widespread sexual harassment. And unsurprisingly, young women are sharing with us how that's impacting on their well-being, their ability to earn what they should be able to earn, pay their bills, and their sort of sense of hope for the future. So these are really concerning findings, I think.
Yeah, those statistics are really impactful, and I agree, that does seem to, affect a wide range of issues. Well, maybe let's come to you and your role with Young Women's Trust. When did you join that organisation, and what's your vision for the organisation?
Well, I joined in January 2022, which feels like that time's gone very fast, as Chief Exec. And we champion young women aged 18 to 30 who are on low pay or no pay. And our purpose, as you said, is to create an equal world of work and raise young women's incomes. We actually, as an organisation, have a fascinating history because we've existed since the 1850s when we were supporting young women migrating from rural communities to cities in the Industrial Revolution, often to work in factories on very low pay. But we've obviously evolved since that time to support young women with the challenges of that they face in the kind of era that we're in now. And that means for us 3 things. We provide practical support to thousands of young women a year, free professional coaching, webinars, support with job applications. We also carry out research with young women themselves to sort of shine a spotlight on the realities of the workplace for them today, like we're sharing today. But also we campaign for change with young women, working with both government and with employers. Because I don't think many people realise this, but young women take home 1/5 less than young men per year, even in their 20s. That's about £4,000 less a year. They're working less hours because of their caring responsibilities. They're more likely to be in low-paid sectors like retail, care, hospitality, and they're not being promoted at the same rates as their male peers. And so there's about 650,000 young women in this country on very, very low pay. And I think we talk a lot about the glass ceiling and getting women into the C-suite. Absolutely right that we should be doing that. But as an organisation, we are trying to shine the spotlight on the broken rung that's really facing young women at the beginning of their careers, because we know that if you don't get this right, the inequality just increases from 1/5 to a pensions pay gap of 35% or more at the end of women's lives. So there's a burning platform to really start young women's careers off to the right footing in their 20s. It's a real make or break decade.
Yeah, absolutely. That's quite a startling statistic about pensions as well, because we know on the whole, the pensions issue is quite a big one. So that disparity is really marked, and
it's
disappointing. Yeah, it is, and disappointing to hear you say that discrimination is at an all-time high. Given how long we've been talking about it and analysing it in the workplace. So. Well, thank you for that summary. And Claire Burton, turning to you now, how did your relationship or Deloitte's relationship with Young Women's Trust come about? And how are you supporting the aims of the charity?
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. Interestingly, we actually engaged with the Young Women's Trust about the same time that Claire started. And I think Claire's really clearly evidence why we've engaged with a charity like the Young Women's Trust. It's a huge issue and challenge, particularly for a business like us that has a strong focus on gender. We wanted to identify charity partners that we could really look to work with around the kind of grassroots issues connected to gender and across some of our other inclusion themes. So we have a number of inclusion partners. So the Young Women's Trust was our gender-focused partner that we got on board with, and it was helped selected for us by our Gender Balance Network, which is a network we have internally that brings together all of our female professionals in the business. But I think I've loved seeing our relationship with the trust develop over the last few years. And I think there's a number of different ways that we've worked with them. So the first I'd pull out was our fundraising. So critically important for charities, and I'm sure Claire could agree with me there. And as a firm, we have particularly supported the development of a new service that the trust has been piloting, testing, getting off the ground. It's called their Power Hours service. We've given about 200,000 towards that service. And what that service is there to do is to bring together young female professionals and help them connect and develop their peer network and kind of help them navigate the world of work, something that we know is really important. So that's one of the ways we've done. The other area I'd point out is some of the opportunities we've helped provide for young women. So internally, we run a banking operations academy, which is effectively a hire, train, deploy type model for individuals into the banking sector. So it's a way of kind of supporting people in. And we've had 18 of our Young Women's Trusts individuals that work with them go through that academy, with 2 getting jobs out the other end, which is, the kind of stuff that makes me really excited. We're actually fundamentally giving those young people jobs. And then the last couple of pieces I'd point out is our pro bono work. So as a firm, our biggest offer that we can give to charities is our skills and capabilities. And there we've tried to really work with the trust to help them become efficient and effective as an organisation. So we've done things like run workshops around with the senior leadership team, helping them become more agile and respond to change. We've done a big piece of work around the digital capability of the trust. And the objective of that was really to help make sure that the digital platform is effective, it builds awareness of the charity, and importantly, targets the people they really need so that they can bring more crucial funding in. Clara, I don't know if you've got anything to comment on that and how you found that work, but it's certainly something I know the teams that got involved in really enjoyed helping support the trust with.
Yeah, it's one of those, as you say, Claire, your support has been really wide-ranging, just both in cash terms financially for us, but to kind of benefit from the wide-ranging expertise of colleagues, and both things like advising our board on their effectiveness, looking at our audience strategy for our website, looking at how we might adapt in the light of AI, which is something that charities often struggle to do because we don't have the resources to stay ahead of the game, and we really need to. And I think also psychologically, because your employee fundraising has also given us £50,000, that we really feel like that you're behind us, in every way. And I think that makes a big difference when you're quite a small charity and you've got a huge agenda, very ambitious goals, that you can get alongside a big company like yourself that shares our values and can really show up in these variety of ways. It's been something we've been really delighted by, and boost the morale for the staff.
I think that's it. Well, I'd say the same about kind of Deloitte staff. I think it's been mutually beneficial because we know, our people feel really passionate about wanting to support causes that align to their aims and objectives. So it's definitely had a benefit on our people internally as they've kind of volunteered and given their time. So yeah, it's been a fantastic relationship, and hopefully lots more to come.
That sounds really constructive and such a positive relationship, like you say, for both of you. So yeah, thank you so much for summarising that for us. Pippa, I'd like to come to you now. You kindly allowed Young Women's Trust to share information about your personal story when they released the results of the survey. So would you like to share that experience with us and maybe outline some of the setbacks that you had to overcome to establish your career?
So I'm in the legal sector, which is, if anyone's in the legal sector, they'll know that's a very, very specific career path in terms of your education and then training afterwards. So at the first hurdle, it is relatively open to anyone to access the LLB, the undergraduate law degree, which I did so alongside parenting my child. And then it gets a bit more difficult after that to practice law. It's changing now, and they've got a new system in place. But when I did it, I did the LPC. And at the time I was doing my LPC, you can combine it with a master's to access the SFE funding, but it's only up to 11,000, and the degree was 17,000. So realistically, that was the first barrier I majorly faced. And I had to sort of cobble together loaning the money and a scholarship, which quite a few people can't access. And the idea is that you work alongside doing your LPC and LLM. So you're doing a degree and working full time, and then you've got caring responsibilities. So it is a huge task, and it's not actually like the accessible career path it's been painted as. And then beyond that, actually getting your foot in the door in the legal sector is no easy feat whatsoever. I worked as a legal secretary for 2.5 years, and it's not uncommon for you to sort of do that and get your foot in the door and then move on to a training contract. And unfortunately, that didn't happen for me. And I went through 2 rounds of applications with no joy. And as anyone that sort of works in business will know, you're not really supposed to ask anyone about their caring responsibilities or whether they're a parent at interview. And unfortunately, for me particularly, it is just an inevitability that it does come up. And I need to know that I can work somewhere that values my role as a parent as well, and sort of respects that there are going to be occasions where I'll need to take time off during the holidays at the same time as quite a few other people, because we all have to do that, don't we? Otherwise, childcare gets really astronomically expensive. And I found that a really difficult thing to navigate. Training contracts to train to be a solicitor are incredibly competitive, and you are up against people with all of this experience that I just couldn't access because I couldn't do unpaid vacation schemes. I couldn't go and do a year's placement in the middle of my degree because I couldn't work it out being a single parent to a child. So I did feel like I was coming up against obstacle after another, which was disheartening. And I know quite a few people that have sort of dropped out of the race at that point. Particularly at my age as a mature student. So I'm 28 now, and I've only just secured a training contract about 2 months ago. So I'm training with other people who are 23. And that's kind of a similar story that I'm finding with a lot of other parents who've gone into this sector, is that you are going up against sort of young, fresh out of uni students who have all this experience and maybe some inside connections, and it can often feel like you're fighting a losing battle. And the most important thing for me in terms of securing a training contract was a firm that looked beyond sort of what is on paper of I have caring responsibilities, and some firms do see that as a bit of a risk. And they've just sort of thought, actually, I'm looking beyond this, and I'm looking at the grades, and I'm looking at the skill set that might come with somebody who has experience with caring for children. I think we are a bit of an underrepresented community, particularly sort of the young parent crowd, in a lot of professional sectors. And I feel like we have so much to offer that's just a complete untapped pool of talent. And for me in particular, it really did take just one firm. It took one yes, going, actually, I'm going to take a chance on you. And it was absolutely the best decision for me. And I hope the firm feels like it was the best decision for them. I feel like I'm getting on really well there. And having an employer that just sort of backs you entirely and understands the skill set that you can bring and the experience you can bring has been important for me, particularly in that respect. But the obstacles are absolutely really off-putting, and for a lot of people who don't have the support that I've had in terms of my family and sort of people that have helped me along the way, professional people that I know, it just completely knocks them out of the race, and they're left unable to break into many different sectors. It's not just individual to law.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that story. It was so compelling, and I can completely empathise when you say that so many people drop out along that process, because as you described, there just seem to be so many obstacles to constantly overcome, and it's a real testament to your resilience and, you know, your determination to keep going. So I'm so glad that you've now found an employer where you feel comfortable and you feel like your skills and your tenacity is recognised, you know, for the value that it has. That's such a great outcome. But looking back on that time when you were working through that process, what do you wish you knew sooner, maybe, or what support did you receive at that time that you found most helpful through that process?
Lean on anyone you can. People want to help. They do. Utilize LinkedIn. It's a great resource. If you're struggling with how to find people on LinkedIn, if you are at university, or even if you're not, many local universities are more than happy to help out. They still have careers services that you don't necessarily need to be a student to access. Reach out to people, reach out to current students in the sector, reach out to past students in the sector, lecturers, people local to you, and ask them if any of them are interested in mentoring you. It really is about who you know as well, but that doesn't mean that you have to come from a family where you have connections. There are other people who may have been in a similar position to you 10 years ago who really want to help other people get into that sector. And it doesn't always feel great, and you are going to have rejections, but I think everyone should get used to doing that in life as well. So just reach out and ask for help, because I know that people have reached out to me and I'm more than happy to help, because I want other people to succeed, and particularly with sort of how prominent I have been in the media with the Women's Trust. I do get it a lot. And I love that. I love that because the vast majority of people want you to do well as well. So when you get over that initial awkwardness of reaching out online, and I know it does feel a bit weird, definitely do that. And you'll find a lot of people like me who have come up with children and other care responsibilities or anything that might have affected their path. They know little tips and tricks to get around. For me personally, I've helped other people secure the funding they need for universities. It can be your absolute minefield trying to get the correct funding as a young single parent through university. And it's not immediately available online. Just reach out and ask. And that's probably where I'd start with that is ask for the help. And if you don't ask, you don't get.
That's a really good point. Thank you. That's great. And Claire R., coming back to you, it was very compelling to hear Pippa talk about how important it was for her to find that employer where she felt really seen and understood and valued for what she brought there. And lots of our C-Suite podcast listeners are actually leaders in organisations. So what can business leaders do to create that positive change for young women?
Well, I think there's three things that good employers are already doing, and there's good examples of good practice out there. And the first thing is around pay, advertising jobs with salary details, practicing salary transparency, not asking candidates for their salary history. That and means that women bring their lower salary from a previous job into the new job. And we know that if you put salaries on the adverts, you're going to drive more recruitment to your positions. And we know that gender, ethnicity, and disability pay gap reporting with actually meaningful action plans can really make a difference. And the UK is lagging behind the EU and some American states that have legislated for salary transparency. So now is the time really for us to kind of catch up, because that's going to close those gender pay gaps. The second, I think, area is looking at progression and the sorts of things that Pippa's been talking about, which is, you know, offering flexible working, enhanced parental leave. Claire might tell us a bit from Deloitte there, because they've got some excellent practice. And again, picking up on what you were saying, Pippa, on really good mentorship and particularly sponsorship makes a big difference to women in the workplace. And the third area is how are we going to tackle this discrimination, the tsunami of discrimination that we're seeing in our annual survey? And I think you can, firstly, good companies are collecting a range of data about the realities facing their employees, whether that's staff surveys, exit interviews, stay interviews, what's really going on, and then tackling that with some leadership from the top. You need more than just good policies. You need people feel confident to use them, and investing in staff training. There was a stat from the CMI in the last year or so that 80% of line managers are accidental line managers. They didn't have any training to be a manager. And yet, particularly at that first line management at the bottom of the ladder, a line manager is either a champion or a gatekeeper for young women. So investing in supporting your line managers at that early stage is going to make a big difference. And as I say, there is really good examples of practice out there. Just to give us a quick plug, we have a guide for employers that people can download from our website, which gives some sort of case studies that people can draw on.
Brilliant. Really clear points there. Thank you. And we'll put a link to that guide in the show notes so people can access that really quickly. I'd like to come straight to you, Claire B, following that comment that Claire made in terms of what's happening at Deloitte. So what are the practical steps that your colleagues have taken to address these issues? And how are you making your workplace more accommodating for young women there?
Yeah, I think it's fascinating to hear what Claire was kind of talking through there, some of those examples. And I certainly think as definitely not a young woman at Deloitte, but having kind of benefited from some of the policies that Deloitte have put in place, the first one I'll come to is kind of flexible working. So Deloitte has a really strong flexible working culture. We haven't stipulated time back in the office. And I've really benefited from that. I work 4 days a week. I've got 2 young children. That is a godsend to me to allow me to kind of manage my life around my job. So I think our flexible working policies is definitely something I would pull out as a key benefit. I think going further than that, we've just recently launched some new family-friendly policies. So that's equalising paid leave for new parents. So we had a survey that we did with YouGov, which found that over half of working mothers said if their partners had more parental leave, it would help them progress in their career. So kind of seeing how that policy can benefit women as well. We're also giving additional paid leave for parents whose child requires neonatal care. You can imagine how horrendous that must be, and worrying about the pressure of work and what that looks like, alongside kind of giving more support for carers, recognising that the challenges that presents around juggling work by giving additional paid leave for carers in the business. So lots of things we've done around our kind of family policies. I think some of the other things I'd pull out is the networks and support. And again, it was great to hear Pippa talk about that and how important that is. And I've certainly benefited from that, kind of having colleagues, peers that you can talk to, that you can share challenges with and build that kind of conversation and support network. But also doing a lot more around how do we help progression of women within our workforce. So we have a Futures Leaders programme, which is helping develop women and underrepresented groups within the firm. That's been hugely successful. We've seen 38% of our first cohort already getting promoted. So by kind of investing in their development, that's been a really big plus. So I think there's a whole range of different things we've tried to do, recognising there's always more to be done on this agenda, and being honest about where we are in terms of some of our targets and metrics has also been really important part of our approach.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I think about that honesty and really looking at the data and the feedback that you're getting to unpack what are the drivers underneath that. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Thank you, Claire. That sounds amazing. So Pippa, coming back to you, and thanks again for sharing that personal story. It was really helpful to get that insight from you. What are the positive things that you learned that you'd like to share with any young woman who might be listening today who's struggling with some of those issues and maybe trying to figure out how to start their own career journey?
So there's sort of two elements as to it, really, as sort of the mental side of things and the practical side of things. And I think there was a day when I had a bit of a light bulb moment. I'm sure many of us, as women, young and old, have had imposter syndrome moments where we think, I don't belong here. This space isn't for me. It is for you. You deserve a seat at the table. Go and apply for that job. Because on the whole, men do typically apply for jobs that they're not qualified for, whilst we quite often apply for jobs that we are underqualified for. And it's once you get in the headspace of, okay, I'm probably going to be rejected and I don't care, you will start achieving things more and more because you will be applying to the jobs that you are supposed to be applying to. And it does take one yes. Outside of that, practically go and get that degree. If you have been putting it off because you don't know what you're going to do with your children, or are you going to be able to do it, just go and start. The help is out there and your university wants you to succeed. My lecturers were great, and on the whole, and I've never had a bad experience with one. Neither have my friends who went through uni with other children. They want to see you there. They want you in those lectures. They want you to get those grades. And for careers that don't require a degree, go and get that qualification. Ask your employer if is there any recourse for you to have funding for those extra qualifications. Just reach as high as you possibly can and keep going with it. Don't take no for an answer. Keep on trying. And that goes for yourself. Stop saying no to yourself. You do deserve to go out there and achieve what you want to achieve. And you shouldn't be held back just because you've had children, or because you have to care for an elderly parent, or because you have anything that might be seen as a detriment by, unfortunately, many employers in this country. It just takes one good employer to help you get there. But also start your own businesses as well. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. We definitely need more female leaders. There are so many avenues open for your success. For so long, I just told myself, I don't think this space is for me. I don't see other people doing this in my circle or sort of beyond, and the people that I do see successful in the sectors that I wanted to go into didn't have the same kind of setbacks as I did. But I had so many people along the way that just sort of, at times needed to hold my hand, and other times were sort of running alongside me, making sure that I got to where I needed to be, which was sort of my mum and dad in particular, but also just my lecturers, several of my bosses that I've had. So it is also about the people you surround yourself with. Find your group. Definitely having another group of young single mums has been really helpful. And we might have also gone down different paths in different ways. Particularly a lot of the mums that I met when I started with Young Women's Trust in 2017 as an advisory panel member. We went on residentials. I'm still in touch with some of them. We're all doing very different things, but we're all each other's biggest cheerleaders. So just find the positivity in all of it, and hold on to that spark, and make yourself proud, and prove a lot of people wrong, because you can get there. And it's a long, tough road, I won't lie. It's taken me about 8 years to get to where I need to be, and I'm still not there yet, but you will get there.
Brilliant. That's such a positive message. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, Claire what will be the most impactful things you think that will level the playing field for young women? And based on that, what are your priorities moving forward from here?
Oh, it's hard to follow that, Pippa. That's kind of inspirational talk. And I think it's really inspiring. I think those three things I said before about salary transparency and fair pay, the young women are on really low wages, and that if you're spending all your energy and talent on just paying your bills, it's really hard to put your energies into your careers. So I think that the fair pay point, and really focusing on the barriers that are holding young women back, the flexible working, the support when you return from parental leave, the mentorship that Pippa's been talking about, and this zero tolerance culture for discrimination is absolutely critical. And the kind of priorities that we're focusing on now moving forward for Young Women's Trust is to carry on providing support to thousands of young women each year. We know that whilst we're trying to campaign for equality with employers and government, that young women need help right now. So we're going to keep on with the kind of support both for networks. Our Power Hours program that Deloitte have been funding us to do is bringing together the young women who, just as Pippa was talking about, until you meet other young women in your situation, you can feel like you are the problem. So introducing women to other young women and expanding your professional network, supporting young women with their LinkedIn profiles, with their CV, the CVs and so on. Also, at the moment, we're looking at two priorities in terms of our research work around insecure work, because young women are more likely to be on 0 hours contracts and hanging on by their fingertips in certain sectors, and trying to get underneath what the good practice is there. And we're going to continue our campaigning with employers and government. We know that the Employers' Bill is now going through Parliament, and that is going to lead to a big increase in workers' rights. But what we're going to be really looking for is to make sure that that legislation is enacted in ways which is going to really make a difference to young women on the ground, and that there's enforcement for those small number of rogue employers who are really breaking the law. And that's the next phase for us is a lot of young women have been telling us they don't know about their rights in the workplace, and they feel like they can't kind of advocate for themselves. So we are there with young women to kind of really shout about this and bring about the change that we know is possible because the great employers are doing it.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and that sounds like a huge education mission, but I wish you all the very best with achieving that because it's such important work. Claire, Burton, I just wanted to give you the chance to add to that. What would you say are the big priorities for you, and what's having the biggest impact for you at Deloitte?
Yeah, I think we've done a lot around our family policies. We're really keen to share that with others and help other corporates go on that journey. And if there's anything we can do, anyone who wants to learn about how we went about doing that, because it is big changes to kind of bring in, we're really happy to share. Obviously, continuing to work with organisations like the Young Women's Trust to use our skills and expertise to help them on their mission, and equally provide some fantastic opportunities for our people to engage with organisations has been really important to us, and we were looking forward to kind of continuing those relationships.
Perfect. Well, my final question, Claire Reindorp, if people want to find out more about the Young Women's Trust and the amazing work that you're doing, where's the best place for them to go?
Well, you can find us at youngwomenstrust.org, but we're also on TikTok, on Insta, on LinkedIn, and you can sign up for our newsletter. Do spread the word. You can become a corporate partner like Deloitte. We would love that partnership, and we'd love to have more. But if you're a young woman listening, do get in touch because we are here for you. So it's youngwomenstrust.org.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So it just remains for me to say a huge thank you to my three guests. That's Claire Reindorp, Claire Burton, and Pippa Rawlinson. Thank you all very much. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please do follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to contribute to this discussion, we would love to hear from you. You can find the C-Suite podcast on LinkedIn and all the usual social channels. If you'd like to show your support, please rate or review the podcast because that really does make a difference to us. And finally, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do that via our contact form, which you'll find on our website. That's csuitepodcast.com. But for now, from me, Debbie West, thank you so much for listening and goodbye.